Hello and welcome to PlayStation All-Stars Battle Royale History, where today we'll be looking at one of the most heavily requested characters. Sort of. First, a little bit of history on the Devil May Cry series. Devil May Cry began when Resident Evil director Shinji Mikami set out to make a new edition of the survival horror series for the brand new PlayStation 2. However, things took some strange turns and ultimately the game ended up being, well, not a Resident Evil game after all. Instead of a survival horror, it became a gothic horror themed hack and slash, one of the original hack and slash games in fact. It featured Dante, a half-human, half-demon hunter who took on jobs to hunt down demons and protect humanity, although mostly he seemed interested in looking as cool as possible while doing so. The popularity of the first game led to 3 sequels, which were mostly well received, giving Capcom another major franchise to their belt, and giving the PlayStation another closely associated third-party franchise. So it stands to reason that Dante would make an appearance in PlayStation All-Stars. But hold on, we're not finished yet. In 2010, it all went wrong. That year saw the announcement of DMC Devil May Cry, a reboot of the series by Heavenly Sword developers Ninja Theory, which featured a redesign of Dante that took away his red coat and trademark white hair, and instead made him pretty much a street punk.
Not in a million years.
When the game was eventually released in 2013, it became apparent that while the game wasn't as bad as everyone expected, it still felt like a brand new game instead of a Devil May Cry, and the brainless dubstep soundtrack and terrible storyline ripped straight from hokey 80s sci-fi movie They Live didn't really help matters. The game switched Dante's origins from a bounty hunter who specialised in demons to a half-demon, half-angel who lived in a world similar to ours, but occasionally got pulled into limbo by demonic forces whenever they felt bored. Oh, and the demons secretly controlled humanity through the media and through commercialism because someone on staff was a conspiracy theorist. Fans of the series were less than impressed. The reaction wasn't much better to Dante's inclusion in PlayStation All-Stars either, since Capcom insisted on the redesigned street punk version of Dante over the much-loved iconic red coat, white hair version of Dante. It was especially controversial due to the reboot being released after PlayStation All-Stars, making its inclusion scream marketing. So this is a controversial video then.
Looks like this is gonna be one hell of a party!
Dante's primary weapon in every Devil May Cry game was a sword. In the first game this was a sword named Force Edge, and a much more powerful sword later on named Alastor, which Dante gained by having it jammed through his chest. Ouch. In the next 3 games, Dante's primary sword was Rebellion, a gift from his father, the legendary Dark Knight Sparda. Each sword had a basic 3-hit combo which acted as the cornerstone for most of Dante's abilities. Rebellion also turned up in the reboot.
Rebellion.
This time around, the sword wasn't an explicit gift from his father, the legendary Dark Knight Sparda, more a genetic gift resulting from his half-demon, half-angel blood. Rebellion formed from an insignia on Dante's back whenever he was in limbo, making it a somewhat more magical sword than its predecessor, although in practice it worked largely the same. However, this time the basic attack was a 4-hit combo called Hacker, which consisted of 3 quick sword slashes, ending in a powerful slash that knocked Dante off balance slightly, possibly referencing his relative inexperience in handling it in the reboot. Much like the original combos, this was also a cornerstone of Dante's moveset. Rebellion is the basis for many of Dante's moves in PlayStation All-Stars, and his basic square move is the Hacker combo from the reboot, as evidenced in the final slash knocking Dante slightly off balance, and also in the fact that, well, it's got the same name. In the first Devil May Cry, melee moves with the sword was somewhat limited. Aside from the basic combo, there weren't many other options. However, one move that gave Dante a little bit of edge on his opponents was High Time, a launch move that saw him swinging his sword upwards, sending an enemy into the sky. It was also possible to perform this in a way that sent Dante up after them. In the first game, this aerial damage was largely limited to guns, which we'll talk about in a moment, and the Helm breaker. This move saw Dante swing his sword heavily downwards, slamming enemies into the ground and causing heavy damage. This was pretty much the extent of his aerial abilities in the first game. In the third game, however, you could switch between fighting styles. Selecting Sword Master granted Dante more sword moves, one of which was a move called Aerial Rave, which was basically a simple slashing combo in the air which could then be followed up with a Helm breaker if you so wished. In the reboot, all of these moves returned, with High Time becoming easier to perform while still retaining its basic functions. Helm breaker and Aerial Rave remain largely the same, although they switch buttons to confuse everybody. These moves also turn up as aerial moves for Dante in PlayStation All-Stars, with High Time acting as a launch move on the ground, which could also allow Dante to follow up opponents automatically. Helm breaker acts as a great spike move, while Aerial Rave gives Dante combo opportunities in the air. Dante gained a new aerial move in the reboot called Roulette. This aerial attack saw Dante swinging his sword upwards a couple of times while in the air, allowing him to juggle enemies even more. There was no equivalent move in the original game, and it was also kind of tricky to perform as it involved pausing your button presses in the air. This is a move in PlayStation All-Stars as well, where it's a little more useful and gives Dante some extra juggling abilities. In Devil May Cry 3, aside from the Swordmaster style, you could also make use of a style called Royal Guard, which focused on blocking and countering. It was tricky to master, but blocking could be used to power up a counter move. A parry system was included in the reboot too, although it wasn't so much of a specific ability, just a feature that relied entirely on timing. If you managed to attack at the right moment while an enemy attacked you, you would parry their attack, interrupting it and causing knockback, and allowing you to continue a combo onto them. It was pretty tricky to get used to, however, since the timing was very tight. The parry is a move for Dante in PlayStation All-Stars, and it's a little easier to use this time, since its use is more like the original Royal Guard than the parry system in the reboot. It's a single button press that knocks opponent back if timed correctly, just like other parry moves in PlayStation All-Stars. The Devil May Cry series wasn't all about swords, however.
Like guns?
In all games, Dante came equipped with twin pistols named Ebony and Ivory, called that because, well, one's black and one's white, and because Dante was secretly a fan of bad Paul McCartney duets. That's not true, I made that. Although these pistols could be fired incredibly quickly because of Dante's demon powers, they were kind of useless on their own because they were weak and didn't really net you style points. But they were handy in chaining combos together, so you could knock enemies into the air or knock them away, then use your guns to keep your combo going as you move back in to melee them. As well as a basic shooting move, DMC3 introduced Rainstorm, a move for the gunslinger style, where Dante would fire his guns at the ground while upside down in the air. It allowed movement in the air while shooting and also just looked kind of cool.
Ebony, Ivory, Mr. Girls.
Naturally, these guns reappeared for the reboot, where they retain their basic abilities. They allow for ranged attacks, and are good for interrupting enemies and chaining combos together. Rainstorm also reappears, along with a new variation that saw Dante jumping up and firing into the air, which wasn't as useful. This is the basis for basically all of Dante's triangle moves in PlayStation All-Stars, where they have a similar quality to the original guns, being largely useless on their own, but good for chaining together combos rather effectively. This is why all of Dante's square moves can chain into the guns, which in turn can be cancelled into any of his circle moves. The DMC reboot introduced two new weapons which reference Dante's new angelic and demonic heritage. The first weapon you gained via a painting of Dante's father, the legendary Dark Knight Sparda, was the Arbiter, which was a giant heavy demonic axe capable of causing a lot of damage. While there was a powerful but slow combo that Dante could employ, pressing the Alt attack button caused Dante to slam the Arbiter into the ground, causing a shockwave. This move was called Tremor, and was capable of launching enemies into the air, which is appropriate since it replaced the High Time move, which did a similar thing. Another move you could perform with the Arbiter was a move called Flush, where Dante flung the head of the axe forward in a deadly spinning motion, which made it an excellent heavy-hitting projectile move. These last two moves are in PlayStation All-Stars, where Tremor no longer causes a long shockwave, but instead performs a more localized tremor closer to Dante for balance. Flush remains basically the same and has the ability to bounce off walls, although it's fairly slow to send out. Of course, where there's a demon weapon, there needs to be an angel weapon. Osiris was obtained shortly after Arbiter from a painting of Dante's mother, Eva. Osiris was a scythe-like weapon which was weak but speedy, which pretty much made up for its lack of raw power. Its basic combo move was called Karma, with Hunger as its aerial variation, and in these moves Dante basically just swung the scythe around causing damage. But its ult attack, Shredder, is where the real action was. This awesome move saw Dante spin the scythe around rapidly in front of him like a propeller, lifting enemies off the ground and catching them in a devastating whirlwind of death. However, this wasn't the first time this move appeared in the series. In Devil May Cry 3, the Swordmaster stance gave Dante this exact same move, although originally it was Rebellion he spun round instead. These moves all feature in PlayStation All-Stars, with Karma giving Dante an extra combo move besides Hacker, while Shredder returns as an awesome anti-air, although it spins less than it does in DMC because, well, it would be a tad overpowered otherwise. Osiris also gave Dante an extra ability called the Angel Boost. With Osiris as your current weapon, Dante could dash quickly through the air, giving him an extra jump and also a quick dash move in order to escape from trouble or to close a gap. This is also in PlayStation All-Stars, where it uses to close gaps and potentially chain combos together, although I'm personally not very good at using it practically. Sue me, I'm bad at fighting games. In addition to these weapons, Dante could unlock the Ophion, which was a whip-like weapon that worked in the Angel and Demon stances. With these two whips, Dante could grapple onto objects and pull himself to hard-to-reach places, or he could pull enemies closer to him. Each of these abilities gave Dante an extra attack move. For the Demon Pull, Dante would pull enemies closer to him and then could perform a move called Kicker, which was literally just a kick move that knocked the enemy back again. For the Angel Lift, which pulled Dante closer to an enemy, he could follow this up with an uppercut move called Payoff. These moves have become throws for Dante in PlayStation All-Stars, although without the use of Ophion this time. Kicker acts as Dante's side throw, where he will kick an opponent away, and Payoff is his up throw, which launches opponents just like in his game. Another ability that stemmed from the Demon Pull and Angel Lift was the Leap move, where Dante would launch himself off an enemy into the air, leaving the enemy open to attacks from above, such as Helm Breaker or the secondary attack of the Eryx. The Eryx was a set of powerful gauntlets that could be used in place of Arbiter. Among the many moves available to Dante was a slam down move where he would punch downwards into the ground from the air. Dante's third throw in PlayStation All-Stars appears to be a mixture of the Leap move and the Eryx slam down move, since the initial jump seems to resemble the leap and the punch downwards certainly resembles the Eryx move. So that's covered most of Dante's moves. Let's take a quick recap before looking at the supers.
Level 1!
In DMC 3, one special move that Dante could unlock was called Drive, and this allowed Dante to charge up his sword with energy, which he would then release as a powerful blast. This move returned in the reboot, where it was similar, and could be upgraded into Overdrive, which gave the move multiple blasts. Using this move required paying attention to light reflections on Rebellion while holding down the slash button, and it was useful at unleashing damage at approaching enemies, although it was very slow. It's also Dante's level 1 super in PlayStation All-Stars, although it's not clear why. In the DMC games, Overdrive was simply a normal move in Dante's repertoire rather than something particularly powerful. Perhaps the fact it had to be unlocked was a factor in this.
Level 2!
Another iconic move for Dante that has existed in the game since the very first DMC was the Stinger. With this move, Dante would dash forward at high speed with his blade pointing ahead of him, causing damage to anyone who got his way. It was often useful for dashing towards far-off enemies, although it didn't make a good combo starter since it often pushed enemies away in the process. Just like Overdrive, this normal move was turned into a super in PlayStation All-Stars. Again, this is most likely a reference to the fact that the move had to be unlocked and therefore you had to work to get access to it, rather than based on the properties of the move itself.
Level 3!
Dante, you are here because I wasn't able to protect you. For that I am truly sorry. Your father fell in love with me. A love that transgressed rigid, ancient boundaries. We chose our path in the face of certain annihilation. We never regretted our choices, but we never gave you yours, my dear son. Now, finally, you will have that choice. You will have a great power. A power that will allow you to forge your own path. That, my son, is freedom.
From the first game onwards, Dante learned how to exploit his demonic genes for an ability known as Devil Trigger. As you fought your way through the games, you could gradually fill up a meter that could be utilised at any time to enter a super mode. In the early games, Devil Trigger simply increased Dante's strength and speed, while simultaneously allowing him to heal while he fought enemies. In the reboot, activating Devil Trigger also lifted enemies into the air and kept them suspended and paralysed temporarily, making it easier for Dante to attack them safely. He also gained a bright red coat and white hair, referencing the original Dante appearance from the previous DMC games. This version of Devil Trigger became Dante's level 3 super in PlayStation All-Stars as well, which is appropriate because the original move required building up a meter. Just like in the reboot, opponents will float around while Dante moves around quickly, looking vaguely like the original Dante, and all of his moves will kill. So that's Dante. I hope you've enjoyed this video, and I'll see you next time when I rise up and strike back with a new video. Stay tuned.